Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Ochi. My name is American Ben. And today we are going to break down the 5 of Spades game from Alice in Borderland. Alice in Borderland, for those who have sinfully refrained from tuning into the show as of yet, tells the story of 3 friends living in Tokyo, Arisu, Karube, and Chota, who flee from the 5-0 into a restroom stall together and then re-emerge back out into the world only to find themselves in a parallel version of Tokyo known as Borderland, within which they are forced to compete in a series of sadistic death games in order to survive. The games are categorized based on the numbers and suits in a deck of playing cards. The higher the number of the card, the harder the game is. As for the suits, diamond games are battles of wits, spade games are games involving physical prowess, club games are team battles, and finally, hearts games are games of betrayal and involve toying with participants' hearts. The 5 of Spades, our focus today, takes place in a 7-story open-air apartment building and is called a game of tag. According to the rules, the contestants must run away from someone or something called the tagger, while simultaneously searching for a safe zone hidden inside one of the building's rooms. Additionally, there's a bomb hidden somewhere in the building, and it will detonate if the contestants do not get to the safe zone in time, the time limit being 20 minutes. Now, perhaps I'm a bit guilty of molding the games to my liking in our coverage of Alice in Borderland, but while perhaps each game doesn't contain one exclusive meaning, I would certainly posit that each of them has a specific message that is emphasized. In the tag game, I would aver that the message is about trust and reliance on other people. The episode begins with a flashback to Usagi climbing up a rock face. She slips and begins to fall, but her father catches her rope before she falls too far. Here she's confronting a dangerous situation and she needs help to get to the top, but there's someone there with her who she's willing to let manipulate her equipment. Well, in Borderland, Usagi, as all beings there do, needs this same type of support, but amidst the heathens there, it's not as easy to trust, so she climbs alone. In the tag game, cooperation is needed, and cooperation requires trust, but the 13 participants involved in the trial aren't so quick to open themselves up to each other as they don't know each other's intentions, and so some of the contestants opt to stay to themselves, while others attempt to figure out whom they can cooperate with.
スペードの5? フィジカルゲームだ。体力が物を言う。
Here, Natobi behaves kind of weirdly as he describes the ways of the game to Arisu. I think he behaves in such a way not only because he's a weird guy, but also because he's trying to size Arisu up. He wants to know if he can trust him or not. The trust-cooperation dynamic to this game is further illuminated with the help of the interspersed scenes of Chota and Sayori conversing outside of the game as Chota convalesces from his leg injury.
俺なんて家は貧乏だし得意なことなんかなくて今だってこんなことになって助けてもらってばっかで
Chota laments how, given his injury and his generally unimposing physique and personality, he has to rely on others in order to survive. He feels like a burden on his friends. Now, there's a lot to what is said here, especially by Sayori, who I think I have to do a full video on because she's so misunderstood. But relevant to this video, she responds to Chota's lament with a rather insightful point.
人は自分より下のやつとつるみたがる。安心だから。
What Chota doesn't realize is that everyone in Borderland has to rely on other people in order to survive. And as Sayori implies, Chota's softness and honesty is actually an appealing feature to his friends because it makes him easier to trust. He's less of a threat, and the wiser people in Borderland are eager to befriend people like this.
見極めてんの。君たちが俺の仲間にふさわしいかどうか。ふざけんな。
何回目ですか、ゲーム。
5回。
Natobi doesn't only want to partner with Arisu and Karube because he thinks they're skillful participants, but also because after a brief analysis, he determines that they're honest people, people who won't throw him to the wolves as Aguni does later to his fellow beach member.
Aguni-san? Aguni-san? Aguni-san!
Strength can be both an asset and a burden in Borderland. People will flock to the strong for protection, but will also fear them. Perhaps not trust them as easily as they would the weak. All you smaller people out there, you know that you constantly have to wonder whether or not the bigger people whom you come across in life are going to snap you in half or not. But back to Sayori, she doesn't trust people, and that informs her approach to Borderland. And do know, if I do indeed do a video on her, I will explain all of the reasons she doesn't trust easily. But for now, what you have to know is that she simply doesn't trust others, and because she doesn't trust others, she's led to be manipulative because she doesn't feel that honesty will get her anywhere.
しぶきさんは人に裏切られてばっかだったんですね。ろくなやつと出会ったことないんだ。
翔太君と同じでしょ。
She preys on Chota's palpable pain and insecurity, thrusting him into memories of his past participation, albeit unwillingly, in some sort of religious cult. She makes him despair for her own advantage, the gain being that she gains Chota's trust and disrupts his loyalty to his friends. So it seems to me that Sayori does still realize that she needs allies in order to survive Borderland, but rather than trust in order to gain them, she practices deceit in order to gain others' trust. This is the choice Aguni makes as well with his comrade from the beach. And additionally, this sort of manipulative wooing is a tactic we see other characters practice throughout the show, particularly Chishiya. But let's stick to the tag game for now. Why is it a 5 of Spades game? Well, it clearly requires physical prowess in order to beat it, at least on the part of some of the contestants. And indeed, the game does have 2 particularly physically gifted players involved in it. Usagi, who can traverse the building like Spider-Man, and Aguni, who can hold his own in combat with just about anyone. The game also has a bit of a puzzle aspect to it as well, and as we know, Arisu is specifically gifted at solving puzzles. He's the first to pick up little details about the game that are of great use to the participants. Thus, given the skills of the players in the game, I see some reasoning for Tag being only a 5 in difficulty level. This all said, the game does seem kind of complicated to beat because of all that it requires out of the participants in order for them to achieve success. They have the skills required to reach the safe zone, but they also need to foster cooperation among the group in order to survive long enough to find it. With cooperation, it's possible to spread all of the participants out throughout the building to conduct a full-scale search of the place for unlocked doors. Of course, some of the participants may still die in this scenario if they run into the tagger. But remember, the difficulty level doesn't necessarily represent how easy or hard it is to beat the game with all participants still alive. It only represents how easy or hard the game is to solve, period, taking into account the type of people involved in the game, as well as the mental and physical stress solving it requires. The group has the requisite numbers to pull off a cooperative solve, given the likelihood that the taggers are going to be able to take a few players out. However, it's not so clear that cooperation is going to be achievable with the types of personalities involved in the game. Prior to the start of Tag, Aguni shows up in the game lobby acting all pissed off and brawling. This definitely doesn't promote trust among the group. At the same time, Chishiya is also rather reticent to engage any of the other participants prior to the start of the game, not wanting to say too much and risk providing those around him with information they can use against him. Then when the game begins, Chishiya goes to the top floor by himself to carry out his own plan. And Usagi takes off by herself as well, so there isn't a lot of trust or cooperation among the group at the start of the game. But what the group does have is Arisu, who understands the value in offering one's trust to others. This is not something that, say, Sayori quite gets.
仲間でもない奴らに本当のこと話す必要ある?
Here, Sayori, in manipulating Chota, explains why she lied to his friends about how she ended up in Borderland. Why tell the truth to people who aren't your allies? But of course, what she misses is that goodwill is what cultivates friendship and fellowship. Arisu does get this. Arisu starts shouting out the tagger's location and weak point so that all of the participants will hear him. He wants to inspire everyone to work together to keep track of the tagger's location and to find the safe zone. And Chishiya responds with doubt.
いいアイデアだけど答えてくれるやつはいないよ
Chishiya has a lot of things figured out, but given his cynicism, he doesn't understand the idea of investing in people. He only understands manipulating them, most likely as a result of the type of people he was raised around. This is why he's fairly surprised when Arisu's plea for cooperation meets some success as Usagi responds in kind. There is a sort of security dilemma that arises amongst people who come into contact with each other in the world, particularly between new acquaintances who don't know each other's intentions. This is true for the tag game as well. Few of the contestants actually know each other, so they can't trust each other. Thus, they fly solo despite the fact that cooperation would be far more efficient. Well, Arisu puts in work to break this security dilemma by encouraging teamwork and by putting himself in harm's way to help others. Though it's probably most fair to say that it's actually Tata who first inspires the alleviation of distrust by approaching Arisu back in the game lobby.
俺よくわかんないままここについちゃって。
ゲームやめとけ。初心者は足を引っ張る。
We discussed earlier how Chota's vulnerability is actually a strength, and we see here how this is true. Tata is another apparently harmless person, and thus Arisu senses that he can trust him. I do think that Arisu is bound to trust others no matter what. But yes, I think it can be argued that Tata's actions prior to the game in only being open and overtly nervous starts a chain of events that leads to the group's success in the game. After Arisu's plea for cooperation and then Usagi's, Aguni then shows up and shares details he's picked up about the tagger.
身長190センチ、体重90キロ、利き腕は右、射撃は基礎的だな。元自衛官か警察官ってところか。
He then devises a plan to beat the game, ordering Karube to join him in taking down the tagger and sending Arisu to find the safe zone.
鬼を狩るぞ。お前は陣地を見つけてこい。
Aguni assigns people tasks according to their skills. As we've discussed in other videos, beach members, especially executive members, know what to do in these games. But perhaps Aguni never organizes this collective plan of attack, sans Arisu making the first move to trust others. Usagi then swoops down and offers her knowledge as well.
5階の南ブロックと6階の南と東は確認した。手分けして陣地を探そう。
まだ1階と2階は確認できてない。
了解。行ってみる。
And all of a sudden, everyone is working together. Now they can really go about trying to beat the game. Of course, while looking for the safe zone, Arisu remembers that earlier on in the game, the tagger shot from a long distance at Tata, a seemingly pointless attack given the range, and thus Arisu surmises that the tagger must have been trying to stop Tata from entering the door by him, which must lead into the safe zone apartment.
なんで離れたとこから撃ってきた？
Of course, Chishiya figures this out when it happens, as in when the tagger fires at Tata, and this is why he decides to start moving right after the bullet fire dies down. Chishiya's strategy is quite clever. He waits on the top floor in a corner spot from which he can view an entire wing of the building and all floors therein. From his position, he attempts to pick up clues as to where the safe zone apartment is, probably figuring that the tagger will attempt to protect it. Arisu and Chishiya end up arriving at the safe zone apartment together. There, Arisu, ever the puzzle solver, wonders why the tagger chooses to chase them through the building rather than just wait at the safe zone. Of course, the answer is that a second tagger is hiding in the apartment waiting to attack them. As they struggle with the second tagger, Arisu discovers that the clear room has 2 buttons installed on its walls that must be pressed at the same time in order to beat the game. And being that the buttons are on opposite walls, it seems impossible for one person alone to complete the task. From its balcony, Arisu yells the number of the safe zone apartment out to the other participants and describes his button trouble. Thanks to Usagi's climbing skills, she's able to scale up the safe zone rapidly and help Arisu take out the tagger and press the buttons, thereby ending the game. The second tagger turns out to be a frightened and rather meek-looking woman. The game masters presented her with an intractable problem: kill others or be killed. The Game Masters show us here that not every game can be won without incurring human casualties, a message which is underscored in the next game, Hide and Seek. This somewhat vindicates Sayori's view of Borderland. There's actually no way everyone can work together and still live. Death in the game is inevitable, and thus she's not totally unwise to focus on her own health and try to figure out how to personally make it out of each and every game alive. And rather darkly, in Hide and Seek, she doesn't die because she finally learns to trust others. Rather, she dies simply because not everyone can live. If she's just a touch more manipulative in that game, perhaps she ends up surviving it. Still, within the tag game itself, it does seem that Arisu inspires the participants to execute collective action and helps them beat the game. Though it seems like it took at least some manipulation for them to achieve victory, and I can't rule out the theory that there's a solution to the game which focuses on manipulation instead of cooperation. Anyways, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. We've only got 1 game left to cover. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. For now, my name is American Ben, Generation Ochi. Peace.